Closures are one of the most confusing JavaScript topics, but you have probably used them without realizing it. In the next 5 minutes, I'll make closures finally click, so please stay till the end of the video. Okay, so let's move on. What is a closure? A closure is when a function remembers the variables from its outer scope, even after the outer function has finished running. This is the official definition, but let's see this with a very simple closure example. In this code snippet, we have an outer function which has a count variable initialized to 0, and then it has an inner function which increments the count and prints the count on the console. So the outer function returns the inner, and then we call the outer function with the variable increment. So what do you think would be the output when you call the increment function first time and then increment function for the second time? So the output will be 1 and then 2. Why do you think so? Let me explain this visually. So the outer function runs 1 and then inner function is returned. Count is not destroyed, and then inner closes over the count, and that's is a closure. So now question is, why count is still there? JavaScript keeps the variable alive as long as there is a function that still references them. So in this example, JavaScript doesn't delete the count variable because the inner function needs it, and that's why count stays alive. To be precise, function remembers the variable where they were created. Let's see a real-world example, and this is very important. We have a create counter function and a count variable which is initialized to 0. This create counter function returns an increment function which increments the count and also returns the count. So now what do you think the counter.increment will print for the first time? Yes, it will print 1. But what do you think it will print on the second time? It will print 2. So if you have noticed in this example, we called counter.increment and counter.increment twice without using the count, which also means that closure let us create private variables. It does not expose the count, but it returns the counter value through the function. Now there is a very common interview example, which we'll see next. And this is a code snippet where we have a greet function and it returns another function which prints hello plus the name of the argument passed. So let's say greet Alex calls the greet function with a parameter Alex. And what do you think the greet function or greet Alex function will print the output? So the output will be hello Alex. And why is that? Because even after greet finishes, the name is remembered. JavaScript knows that the name is required or it is needed by the inner function, which is going to be returned by the greet function. So this is a very good example for the interview. Now let's see a very common mistake that is made during the interviews or even during the programming. We have a for loop here where we have I declared with var initialized to 0, I is less than 3 and I++. Now inside this for loop, we have a set timeout function which prints the I every 1 second. So what do you think will be the output when this for loop runs? The output will be 3, 3, and 3 because var creates one shared variable. So how do we fix this? We fix this with declaring the I variable with let. So there is a very simple fix which will give you or which will give each loop its own closure, and then your output will be 1, 2, and 3. Yes. So now when you are using closure, we use closure every time when we create event handlers, we create callbacks, we use set timeout, Or if you work with front end in the React hooks or factory functions, you use closures most of the time without realizing it. So, what is the final rule? If a function uses variables from outside itself, that's a closure. And that's it. So if closures finally make sense, like the video and subscribe to Snackable Code.